Any further discussion by the board on item number 4 on coordinator's report? Okay, Michael, when you get the information, let the individual commissioners know. Does any of the board members have anything else for Ms. Brunel?
Well, I got one item that she has information on her report, but it's on my report also. My report's number 3, but hers, she and I are referencing the same thing. It's item number 4 in her report. But I'll just read mine. So inform the board that the state of Florida is restructuring its response to hurricanes. In a memo sent to the counties, and Pam got it, from Mr. Brian Kuhn, DEM Director, outlined why the state will no longer use a consultant to assist local governments in writing PWs, but instead are allowing local governments to work directly with FEMA. Despite Mr. Kuhn saying in his memo that this will streamline the process, Pam and I believe this is a big step backwards for the county. The decision has been made retroactive to Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Hermine. Franklin County still has a $3.5 million PW under review for repairs to Alligator Drive that was written by the state's consultants at the time, and they were DSI was named the consultants. The memo came out last Tuesday, and I've been unable to get a clear answer on the status of the PW. And I talked to Pam this morning; she doesn't have any better idea either. Basically, the state of Florida is saying, "Oh, it's going to make things easier by the counties. We're not going to use our statewide consultant that they've used for 20 years, and these consultants, particularly for us, have 20 years of experience in work on Alligator Point. They know the history. They know what can be obtained through FEMA. They were very cooperative, very proactive as far as I was concerned, in getting the maximum amount of benefit out of FEMA we can get for Alligator Point. So by removing them from the equation, we are now put in the position of having to negotiate with FEMA directly, for which we've never done. I've never done it in my 29 years of the county. We've always had a consultant who comes down and writes these PWs with our assistance. They write them, and then they negotiate with FEMA and work with FEMA on getting these things approved. But now we are put in the position of having these PWs. Well, right now they've been written. We just have to negotiate with FEMA, I guess. I don't know what's going to happen. But in future hurricanes, we're going to put in the awkward position of writing PWs from scratch, which none of us have ever done before. And I don't like it at all. And it's very confusing why the state of Florida has done this at this time. It's only 6 weeks away from hurricane season. Why are you doing this?
That and Alan, all your declarations of assistance come from the state to the feds, and then it turns around and flows back. You know, the governor has to call for the declaration from the president, blah, blah, blah. But now they're going to do that and then take a hands off the process.
That looks
but
like
everything flows from the federal government to the state government down to these local entities.
Commissioners, I will tell you the general consensus when it comes to counties is the state is trying to back out so they don't have to pay their 12.5%. That the counties will have to pick it up as a whole because they're going to say, I'm not involved in that. Mm-hmm. To give you a little bit of history, the state has always had state employees that were called PACs. They were the go-between us and the feds to make sure that the feds didn't push us around or run over us. And then Governor Scott decided that he wanted to privatize. They fired state employees and told them that hopefully they would get picked up by DSI. He hired DSI to run the state's recovery. They had a state employee, a recovery chief. The state now has asked him to resign, but yet turned around and has advertised his job. The state, I hate to say it, EOC is in
shambles.
Yes, sir. And there, I will tell you, their exercise yesterday that we all participated in proved that. We had our webinar started at our exercise started at 8 o'clock. I got the email at 9. But we basically ran our EOC yesterday. Our part of the exercise, we did basically our own thing. Now we were required to put a sit rep in, again, make believe. But we practiced our web EOC, which is a software that the state has bought for us so we can all see what we're doing, the state can see what we're doing. It was a good exercise yesterday because everybody that works the EOC was supposed to be there. And I will say our county employees showed up and we worked through some kinks in the web EOC, so we know that we have to go back and, as far as Franklin County is concerned, they've got to rework our portion of that web EOC. What they have now will not work for us.
But yeah, so but Carol and Pam said, so State of Florida at one point had employees who did recovery stuff, then they hired this DSI, and now they fired DSI. So they let their employees go, They hired a consultant, they let the consultant go, so we don't know who's up there who has any experience in recovery now. And they sent out a memo, and they named 2 names, but these people are now overwhelmed with trying to help, 67 counties.
67 counties.
It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
I don't even know these people that they've
So
named.
basically what it's gonna come down to is we're gonna have to hire our own consultant.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, with our debris monitors, they're supposed to help us write our PWs. I've got to go back and talk to them and say, I know that you write debris project worksheets, but are y'all going to help us write the others? I tried to write my own project worksheet for my portion of emergency protective services. The template that they sent you did not work, and they kept sending us the same template, and they kept telling us that it was on our end. It was not on our end. Their template doesn't calculate. Now they're saying that they've come up with one that basically that everyone in the state of Florida is going to use. So that's going to be interesting to see this template and if it really works.
I will say on the big PWs, preparation has been excellent. They have come in and given the FEMA people the basic numbers. So I can now get a point. It was a preparation design that, and the numbers that we got from Michael Browski and preparation themselves about how much the cost of sheet pile is going to be and the volume of materials necessary. So we do use engineers to provide that stuff. But then we give it off to the PAC, the FEMA people and state people, and they work and they massage it into the system that they use, and then it comes back to something we sign. But our initial numbers, we do have some assistance. My fear is that even when ProBridge helps the initial numbers, we're going to be trying to turn this thing into a written PW, which we've never done before. And I don't even think ProBridge has done that kind of stuff. They've always worked the basic engineering calculations, but then turning it into a product that satisfies FEMA, we've always had this other consultant do it.
The bottom line is you're gonna get less money out of FEMA.
I think that's where it's headed too.
That's where it's headed.
Yeah, if you don't-
You're gonna get less response from them, you're gonna get less money to fix repairs, which again is gonna put the burden on the taxpayers, such as Alligator Point Road. We got a PW out there, and hopefully, you said earlier, it might be a year before we get that road fixed. But if it washes into again, without any consultants, having to pay the 12% match, having to do all these things, and then you're not guaranteed that FEMA's gonna do anything for you because the state is not pushing them on behalf of the people that the state's reps are elected to represent.
That's how we see it, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's well said, Commissioner.
And I'm assuming it's this way all the way across the state.
Yes.
We're gonna have to turn this thing around.
Yeah, right now, and I don't know whether the state did it intentionally or not, but right now it only affected, they've done retroactive to Matthew and Hermine. Those 2 hurricanes weren't statewide. In fact, they didn't affect South Florida. So the majority of the state isn't aware of this transition. I mean, they've heard about it, but it's not affecting them personally. Those two hurricanes were not big impacts to the state.
But what about all the beach renourishment they're doing over on the east coast, Daytona Beach and all in there where everything was washed away?
Stewart.
These people are all on their,
That's
they're all
Matthew.
on their
That's,
own.
that's,
Right, you're
that's
right.
gonna affect them. That's Matthew. Yes, sir.
That's all on the.
That's Matthew.
Everybody's
That will
all on their
affect them.
own
Yes,
now,
sir.
huh? All these big,
Unless those PWs have already been approved and now, so once the PWs are approved, then well, even though they're.
They're already, they've already been written.
Right.
They're actually in Emmy. We're just waiting on FEMA to obligate them.
If y'all remember back, when Matthew came in after Hermine did, they were doing PWs for Matthew before we even had anything done for Hermine, Levy County, Taylor County, all that, so.
the state just allocated a bunch of money to help with this renourishment over there on the east coast, Daytona Beach and all in there. Multi-millions of dollars. Is that in conjunction with what the relief FEMA was supposed to provide also?
Well, it depends, because the state of Florida has what's called a long-term beach recovery plan. And that is, that if you already have a beach that you've renourished, engineered beach, as they say, then yes, the state of Florida, those counties probably went to the state of Florida, the legislature and said, hey, half our beach is washed away. FEMA puts up some money, the state of Florida puts up the half money, and they put it together. So those problems are probably with that
Okay,
beach renourishment
okay,
program
okay.
that we've had access to also.
Okay, well, we better start looking at something like this for Alligator Point, because that road washed away again, and we can't get no help to put it back. It's gonna be like a carriage trail going down through there, with a little sand and a little lime rock. Because this county cannot take care of all this stuff on its own. We're barely paying the bills now.
Well, we want to bring this up to your attention. I hope this week, the other problem is that our legislators are tied up in this last week of session, so we can't get a hold of anybody to help us find out, why the state did this. But hopefully, starting next week, when the session's over on Friday, we'll be able to get some assistance. But we want to tell you all about it.
We better make this a priority for fact
Yeah.
and try to get something done this next legislative session up there to rectify this, because this is gonna be devastating for a small county. Now, if you got a county that's got $100 million in reserve, that's one thing.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't have that. And that's like the homestead exemption stuff, It won't affect somebody so bad if they got $150 million in reserve. But a small rural county like ours, or Liberty, or Gulf, or some of these smaller counties is gonna be affected a lot more with some of these tax relief that they call themselves giving. And then tie your hands where you can't raise the millage to make that money up. Just as I told the board 2 months ago, you better start looking at where we're gonna cut, for this homestead exemption. We're gonna lose $300,000. That's gotta come from somewhere. We ain't got no money tree here. So we're gonna have to make cuts somewhere. I hope the board has begun to thinking about that. It won't be long, we'll be going into that budget session and trying to figure out how we're gonna do it.
Well, I understand, just to let you know, because I got an update this morning, you may have already seen it in your iPad. It looks like they're gonna do, this is way off the topic, they're gonna talk about the homestead exemption. It looks like it's headed towards, the legislature's gonna have the local governments vote on this thing, put it on the ballot in November 2018, what it looks like now.
So they're doing this under constitutional revision? Is that what
I
you're
don't
saying?
know, the email that I got from FAC this morning said that it looked like the vote would be to allow local governments to have the voters determine if they want that additional homestead exemption.
That's correct.
in November 2000.
That's correct.
On that,
Vote on in 18, and then it'll be,
Enacted in 19.
that's correct.
Well,
On that
and what they're doing too is they're doing the homestead exemption, not on the 75,000 to 100,000. They're doing it from the 100,000 to 125,000. And they're still looking at, because the House had voted for the 75 to 100,000. So they're gonna have to, the Senate voted for the 100 to 125,000 yesterday. So now they've got to send it back to the House to see if the House will change that. Also, they do have that offset in there for physically constrained counties, which we are one of them, so.
on that beach renourishment thing, if you haven't done it in your county, you don't qualify. You got to do the first one on your own.
Yes, yes, that's correct. And I'm working on some numbers, and I'll hope to give them to you pretty shortly about, what some options are down there in Albear Point. But yes, that's correct. We have to find a way to fund it our first time. Yes.
Yeah, once you do it the first time, then you in the ballgame.
But only for 50%.
But anyway, and I won't do it today, but I'm looking at something for you all to consider.
The feds in the state are cutting us out, we're all on our own. That's the bottom line.
Yes, sir.
That's the bottom line.
That's it.
Okay, does anybody have anything else, Ms. Pam? Because we've gotten way off track here. We need to move along. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda would be Mr. Eric Lovestrand, Extension Office Director.
Morning, Commissioners. I don't have anything additional for you this morning for my report, but item number one on Michael's report is related to the vegetation control along the utility right-of-ways. Thought that might be something you'd want to touch on.
Commissioners, at the last meeting, I informed the board that Duke Energy notified the county that they would start spraying herbicide in the areas that they have trimmed vegetation on their power lines last year. The board directed me to contact our extension agent, Mr. Lovestrand, and ask him to research the herbicide Duke was planning on using. The board wanted an alternative herbicide that would reduce the scorched look, if I could use that word, not kill all the vegetation in the sprayed area, and not cause damage if it flowed into the bay. Included in your agenda packet was Mr. Lovestrand's response to the board's request. And as I say into debate, there's also been some concerns that some people that have water wells, they're worried that if they Duke sprays too close to those wells, how does it affect their water supply?
And one of these people actually contacted me, and they're very concerned about their health and well-being. Because, your well has to be so many feet from your septic tank, and you got all these requirements you gotta meet, so they put it out on the edge of the property, which is at the edge of the Florida or Duke Energy easement, and then they're spraying all this herbicide. these people live between East Point and Carabel, which I'm assuming is one of the main target areas. What are they supposed to do, and how are these herbicides going to affect their wells? Can you answer that?
Probably not at a high level of detail, but in general, if they're applied according to the label directions, they're not going to be translocated down through the soils to the aquifer, get into well situations like that. If you're using an adjuvant in these mixes, which they are in this mix that they were using last year, that adjuvant should not be applied at all to water bodies if they're connected to the bay or where it can move to those kinds of areas, because the adjuvant is really what's toxic to fish and aquatic animals in those systems. But it is listed for, the one they're using is listed for application where you have maybe a wet ditch situation with no flowing water or a temporary standing area of water that doesn't have, aquatic life considerations. And those materials degrade pretty quickly once they get in the water. They can have an immediate impact, but they don't last long-term and stay in there causing problems. The different chemicals react differently and do different things in the environment. The primary one that they're using that does the quick kill on the vegetation is the glyphosate. That's the, let's see, what they call that. Rodeo was the brand name for that product they were using. And that basically gets sprayed, and once it's on the vegetation and dries, it's not a real concern. It kills the tops back, but it doesn't go down into the soil and stay active and continue to kill there. What they spray to try to get the woody brush controlled in a better way is the imazapyr chemical, which is in the Arsenal brand that they were using. That does get translocated down and into the roots of the plant, so it can be active there and have a better effect on the tougher brushy vegetation to kill that. So it stays active longer in the soil to be able to be effective on some of those harder to kill plants that they want to take out. So, it's a complicated mix of what they're using and how it affects the vegetation there. But they use 3 different products to attack specific things that are there, and they're doing it for economic reasons primarily, to only have to run this spray program one time through there to get maximum effect. There are, alternatives range everything from no chemical use and just total mechanical control to total chemical use like they're doing now, basically for a one-time pass to knock back all of the vegetation in those areas. Now, mechanical control, probably, that's not going to be their best option economically. It's going to take a lot more effort, manpower, machinery. It's not as good an option either for some things from some plant species, because you cut them and you get a lot of resprouting and more stems there for the next time. It just creates the problem, kind of adds to it. Maybe something in between where they do maybe a little bit more targeted approach with some of the herbicides that are a little more selective, that target just the woody brush and don't kill all of the grasses, the vegetation that are in that lower layer. If they don't need to take those plants out for any particular reason, if it's more just an access issue with getting the woody brush out, they could use maybe a more selective herbicide. And the other thing would be just maybe a more selective application of where they put it, and just target the woody species and not spray the grassy and herbaceous areas, especially right adjacent to people's property where there might be a concern with a well situation, or just the look of it, where you're killing a lot of grass and ditch cover along somebody's property that isn't necessarily an access issue. So there are some points for discussion possibly with them. I've got access to a fellow up at our Research and Education Center in Quincy who's an expert on this topic and has worked with utility companies in areas for a lot of his work. So he may be one to bring into a conversation. This gets discussed further, and Duke's willing to come and sit down and talk with you folks.
We don't understand half of what you just said. Okay?
I
So
don't
we're gonna have
understand
to
a
rely
lot.
on you and your expertise and your friend that is an expert at this.
Yeah.
I don't understand nothing you just said. I understand part of it when you're saying it
Right.
just goes down and other chemical will go down into the roots of the plant. I understand all that.
Right.
But as far as me formulating a letter and writing to Duke Energy and trying to tell them what to do, that ain't gonna happen.
Well, same here. I don't feel like I'm at that level that I could.
So what do you suggest we
really
do?
tell
Because
them.
we need to tell them something. We don't want this stuff in our bay. We got people worried about their wells, and you're telling me now that don't go down into the aquifer and all. So those people should be fine. Is that what you're saying, as far as the wells and
I
drinking
think
water?
the concern there would probably be pretty low. you know,
Okay, the
for
concern will be low
products.
there, so I know what to tell these
It's
people
the
next
same
time
thing
they
for
ask
it
me.
getting into the bay. I think if these products are applied, the ones they're using, according to labels, and people aren't misapplying, doing bad things when they're out there that they're not supposed to, concerns would probably be low for those things to get to the bay and be in the bay.
So I think what the board needs to do is to do,
Maybe express some
with a motion and a
concerns.
second, is direct you to get with your expert that you said you knew up in Quincy,
Mm-hmm.
and come up with some suggestions of how the board is to react to this, so that we can draft a letter or something to Duke and give them some of the alternatives that you're talking about that would be less effective, but less harmful in our coastal community here. As our whole community basically is right along the coast,
Right.
which is very unique for any county in the state of Florida. That the whole county's along the coast. All your development is along the coast. So we need to come up with some guidelines and some suggestions to make to them.
Maybe to
Yes.
express concerns that have been expressed to the board, so they can understand what you guys are dealing with, and see if there's some alternatives, somewhere to meet in between, maybe.
But Tim, we dealing with Duke, that's a giant. So, we had the same problem last year, we're gonna have it this year, next year. But I think if we tried on a tri-county approach, where we can get some more counties to go with us, if we try to do it by ourselves, we not gonna, we probably won't succeed, but if we get, like Wakulla,
Cook County.
Gulf County, up the road there, up 67, Liberty and all of them, we send a letter out and ask them to support us and write it together, we might get something done.
So you putting that in the form of a motion to direct staff to get with these neighboring counties to see if they're interested in cooperating?
Yeah, I put that in.
Now that we're
form.
trying to look at a more suitable product to be used,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll second your motion.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley. Hang on there. Second by Commissioner Sanders. Any further discussion?
I have some discussion. I just want to say, up 67 and those areas sprayed, off of 67, they still are dead.
Oh, yeah.
And it worries me because I went out looking for the parrot pitcher plant up 67, and right where the parrot pitcher plant is supposed to be at, that's where they sprayed. And those parrot pitcher plants, if you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Eric, are rare. And of course, it's gonna be in Tate's Hill, everything rare is in Tate's Hill. But, I mean, they're not there. And it concerns me that you've got a dead swipe about 10 foot all the way down these roads, all the way down. Nothing, where they sprayed at last year. They don't need to come back in here and spray again this year. The stuff's still dead. So we need to make sure that we get support for it and just ask Duke Energy to look at our side of the equation instead of just looking at their side.
I believe with them other counties, they'll talk to us a little more, at least.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? All opposed? A motion carries. As far as what Eric needs to do, though, to help us come up with some other recommendations of different things that they could spray.
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanders, second by Commissioner Lockley, to direct Eric to try to get with his experts up in Quincy and see what they can come up with and different alternatives that we could write a letter and offer to do and to substitute for some of the stuff that they're doing and also addressing our concerns. Any further discussion?
Yeah, she wanted to talk, she deal with that stuff. Maybe she can do it.
She ain't at the podium, she ain't asking to be recognized, so.
Oh, all I was going to say.
Hold, you need to come to the podium and speak your name for the record, please.
Lois Swoboda, and all I was going to say, speaking as a citizen, not for the paper, is that I was up on Sunday looking for pitcher plants in a power line where I always see them along Brickyard Road. And I mean, there used to be a huge stand there. There were none. None. It's a place where I've gone for years to see pitcher plants, and they're all gone.
What are you calling these?
Pitcher
He's
plants.
talking about the
Yeah.
pitcher plants, the little
Yeah.
tubulars that the bugs go down in and
Oh,
they
okay.
get, yeah.
See, I was looking at the parrot.
I caught your flycatcher.
The
Well, that's
parrot
an
pitcher
area.
plant has a little thing that looks like an upside down
Right.
tulip looking thing.
And generally, those areas where the pitcher plants are like grassy wet savanna kind of habitats
That's right.
that honestly don't have a lot of woody vegetation and don't require a lot of spraying. And I did see some areas along 319 where it branches off past Turkey Point, where areas were sprayed that had a lot of low gopher apple ground cover that I think they interpreted as being small runner oak or live oak sprouting there that they sprayed, and that was a perfect ground cover to leave there. It would have kept woody vegetation from coming in. So it's just a matter of maybe some looking at a little more targeted approach that could even save them some dollars, down the road if they're not just doing a general long linear spraying kind of pattern out there. But it's, there's innumerable options from one extreme to the other.
We do have a motion and a second on the floor, and we need to move along. But having said that, it's one thing for them to be spraying, it's another thing that this county doesn't have anybody to monitor what they're doing. I mean, we have an individual here that said she was looking for plants, we got a commissioner, and we got yourself, some of the observations you made, but we don't have the county staff to go along and monitor and really, look at what they're doing. I mean, we're just taking their word for it that it needs to be done. We're taking their expertise as to what chemicals need to be used. So we're really hamstrung here as a small county is not having the resources that we need to go along and monitor this type of stuff.
Well, I can tell
So we're
you-
having to rely on you, Eric. I know we're putting something on you, it's probably out of your realm, so to speak, but
A little bit, but.
somebody needs to handle it for us, and you the man.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you one thing, when they come by my house, once they got my dogwood tree, I told them to get on out of there. They done killed my dogwood tree, so.
Yeah.
Took me 30 years to grow.
Anyways, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries. And Eric, as I said, I know it's a little bit out of your realm, but we'd appreciate, the board would appreciate if you'd do the best you can with this situation and come back to us with a recommendation and maybe some information from the expert to let us know how to proceed.
Sure.